Welcome to the Explainer. If you've been paying attention lately, you probably feel like the future hasn't just arrived, it's practically crashed right through the front door. Today, we're looking at a fascinating collision of forces that are shaping our world at this exact moment. We're going to synthesize three massive, newly released Outlook reports from Stanford University, Deloitte, and the Boston Consulting Group, and we're going to use them to build one cohesive picture of the year 2026. And look, this isn't just about a few isolated industry updates. We are looking at a year where staggering technological leaps are colliding head-on with shifting human demographics and some very hard, undeniable environmental realities. I'm absolutely thrilled to unpack this with you and uncover what it all means for the way we live and work. Okay, let's dive into this with a quote from the Stanford Artificial Intelligence Index report, which gives us a perfect lens for understanding this year. In their opening analysis, they say, "The data does not point in a single direction. It reveals a field that is scaling faster than the systems around it can adapt." Honestly, that single sentence is the absolute core theme of 2026. We're experiencing this profound friction between digital speed and physical reality. We have technologies and consumer demands accelerating at just a breakneck pace, while our physical infrastructure, our economic models, and our corporate systems are sprinting, and honestly, often stumbling, just to keep up. So, here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with Part 1, Welcome to 2026. Then Part 2, the AI reality check. From there, Part 3, the generational consumer shift, followed by Part 4, the sustainability ledger, and finally, we'll connect all the dots between tech capabilities, travel demographics, and fashion economics in Part 5, navigating the transformation. Let's get right into Part 1, Welcome to 2026. And that brings us to Part 2. The AI reality check. To really understand the turbulence of 2026, we have to start with the most disruptive technology of our time. Right now, we're living on what researchers like to call the jagged frontier of artificial intelligence. It's a place of bizarre, almost comical contradictions. Get this. Today's top AI models can easily earn a gold medal at the International Mathematical Olympiad. That is an incredible feat of executing flawless PhD-level reasoning. Yet, those exact same super-intelligent models have a 50.1% failure rate when you ask them to do something a kindergartner can do, which is read an analog clock. I mean, it's wild, right? This jagged frontier is completely reshaping our expectations. We're learning that AI isn't universally smart. It's highly specialized. It's brilliant at the profoundly complex, and yet utterly baffling when it comes to basic human intuition. But we have to remember, AI isn't just some invisible software floating around in the ether. It requires steel, silicon, real estate, and massive amounts of energy. 5,427. That is the staggering number of physical AI data centers operating in the United States alone right now. That's literally more than 10 times any other country on Earth. Because you see, the cloud, it's actually very much on the ground. And the reality of scaling artificial intelligence is fundamentally a challenge of civil engineering and physical infrastructure, not just coding. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that despite that massive physical footprint, a severe talent drain is underway. Since 2017, there has been an 89% drop in the number of AI researchers and developers moving to the United States. This is an absolutely critical takeaway. Human talent in the AI space is hypermobile. The top minds out there are seeking environments with massive investment, sure, but perhaps less regulatory friction or better immigration pathways. Smaller, really agile nations like Switzerland and Singapore are actively stepping up. They are turning the fight for AI supremacy into a battle for human capital. So the physical infrastructure might be heavily concentrated in the US, but the brains, they're spreading out. And because of this talent shift, the global map of innovation is being rapidly redrawn. The era of unquestioned U.S. dominance in AI development, well, it's effectively over. As of this year, the U.S.-China AI capability gap has practically closed entirely. The top proprietary models from both countries are continually trading the lead, and they're often separated by margins as thin as 2.7% on standardized benchmarks. The race is tighter than it has ever been, proving that the technological moat many Western companies thought they had is actually quite shallow. So what does this all mean? Well, this digital arms race comes with a very heavy physical toll. Training a single massive model, like Grok 4, emitted over 72,000 tons of carbon dioxide. To put the scale of this into perspective, the total power capacity required by these data centers now rivals the peak demand of the entire state of New York. But the real shocker here is everyday use. Simply asking an AI a question, what the industry calls the inference phase, requires immense cooling. Running GPT-4o uses enough water to satisfy the drinking needs of 1.2 million people every single year. AI is miraculous for sure, but it's undeniably resource hungry, putting tech giants directly at odds with global climate goals. Moving on to part 3, the generational consumer shift. As the technology landscape radically shifts, so does the economic base that's actually paying for it. Pulling from Deloitte's Travel Outlook, we see a monumental demographic tipping point. As of this year, Gen Z and millennials make up exactly 50% of the traveling public. That is perfectly balanced against the 50% made up of Gen X and boomers. The two youngest adult generations now entirely dominate consumer demand. And they aren't just seamlessly replacing older generations, they are bringing entirely different habits, tools, and values to the market. Remember that massive AI adoption we just talked about? Well, these younger consumers are actively integrating those advanced technologies directly into their daily lives. Nearly a quarter of all travelers now use generative AI tools for trip planning. That's an adoption rate that has literally tripled since 2022. Millennials, in particular, are really leading this charge. Just think about the implications of that for a second. They're completely bypassing traditional search engines like Google. They aren't reading top 10 lists on travel blogs anymore. They're having conversations with AI agents that curate their exact itineraries. This completely upends decades of established marketing funnels and discovery mechanics in the travel industry. But hey, it's not all unbridled enthusiasm and high spending. We're simultaneously seeing the rise of what Deloitte astutely calls the cautious class. High-earning Americans, who have traditionally been the unbreakable bedrock of luxury travel and high-end consumer spending, are actually pulling back. They are navigating some deep economic uncertainty, inflation fatigue, and general financial pessimism, which is making them highly selective about where they put their dollars. So the crucial point is that these changing habits are squeezing industries from two sides. On one hand, Gen Z isn't just using new tech tools, they're bringing very rigid new values. 42% of them make travel choices based strictly on a company's sustainability practices. On the other hand, financial pessimism among the high-income earners who traditionally fund these industries has jumped significantly, going from 9% to 15%. The modern consumer is essentially a complex paradox right now. They absolutely demand greener options and seamless technology, but they're increasingly cautious with their wallets, demanding undeniable value for every single dollar spent. This brings us to part 4, the sustainability ledger. That intense consumer demand for greener practices from Gen Z, paired with the massive environmental footprint of the tech industry, brings us straight to the hard economics of the Boston Consulting Group's report. Sustainability is no longer just a PR talking point or a slick marketing campaign. It is a brutal economic reality. Climate disruptions are already causing raw material price spikes of up to 2 times for staples like cotton and wool. Furthermore, incoming environmental regulations and international textile fees are projected to erode net profits by 4% by 2030 if companies do nothing. In industries like fashion, where margins are notoriously razor-thin to begin with, a 4% hit to net profit is absolutely catastrophic. So, sustainability is actively reshaping global cost structures. Because of these extreme financial risks, the responsibility for climate action has fundamentally relocated. It's moving right out of the Chief Sustainability Officer's domain and landing squarely on the desk of the Chief Financial Officer. It's no longer just about saving the planet, as noble as that is. It's about mastering risk, optimizing supply chains, and protecting corporate margins in a highly volatile, unpredictable world. Let's move to and see how this builds a framework for the corporate response. Boston Consulting Group outlines an evolutionary ladder for CFOs facing this crisis, mapping out 4 distinct stages of maturity. It starts at the baseline as a risk mitigator, where the focus is simply on legal compliance and avoiding fines. Step 2 is the cost optimizer, finding efficiencies, like, say, using less water or electricity just to save money. Step 3 is the commercial driver, where companies actually unlock top-line growth by creating the new green products that those Gen Z consumers crave. And finally, the highest level is the transformation enabler, where sustainability is so deeply embedded into the core business strategy that it becomes the primary engine for long-term value creation. Finally, part 5, navigating the transformation. And this brilliantly illustrates how everything we've talked about connects. When we pull back and synthesize the insights from Stanford, Deloitte, and BCG, a single interconnected ecosystem emerges. The AI explosion is driving massive tech scaling, which is hitting hard physical and environmental limits. At the very same time, a new demographic of Gen Z and millennial consumers is taking over the market. They are armed with this new AI technology, completely bypassing traditional discovery and aggressively demanding eco-friendly practices. And wrapping around all of this is ecoeconomics, where extreme climate disruptions and green regulations are actively reshaping the cost structures required to serve those demanding consumers and power that hungry technology. These aren't three isolated trends, folks. They are the gears of a single machine driving the global economy in 2026. Which leaves us with one final, absolutely critical question to consider. As artificial intelligence accelerates well past human baselines, as the consumer demographics fundamentally shift beneath our feet, and as the hard costs of climate change rise, is your industry prepared for the intersecting realities of 2026? Take a moment to think about how these forces are actively colliding in your daily work. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer.